Currently in Fiji, we have minimum wages established in 10 different sectors. So in each of these sectors, government has set the lowest wage that can be paid for a worker in that sector. But there are a lot of people in Fiji who fall outside of those sectors. For instance, people who babysitters, who look after babies, people who work in agriculture. So there's a lot of people in Fiji in which we don't have any control over their wages. So historically, Cabinet in its meeting yesterday has for the first time announced a national minimum wage for which no other wage is allowed to fall under. This is a historic development for Fiji, for this country. It's the first time that it's happened, and it's something that is along the lines of government's vision. The vision of this government is very simple. The vision of this government is to build a better Fiji. That means a better Fiji for people who are running business, people who are employed in good jobs like you and me, and also people right at the very margins of society, those at the very bottom. So we need to be able to build a better life for them by making sure that they get a wage which allows them to have a better life. And this decision by Cabinet also falls in line with the charter which calls for government to make a significant impact in reducing poverty. And it also falls very much in line with Section 33 of our Constitution. Section 33 of our new Constitution basically says that government must take reasonable measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of the right of every person to work and to adjust minimum wage. So this Constitution has just come in place. The Ministry of Labour has activated that provision of the Constitution. The Constitution has just come in, and we've activated this by establishing this national minimum wage. The Ministry is very thankful for the work that we've had from our consultant that helped us in this exercise, Dr. Mahendra Reddy from the Fiji National University. He has been the consultant that we have used in order to come up with the data that allowed us to establish this national minimum wage. We had to interview about 9,770 workers from different sectors. These industries, these workers were selected in a random manner, and we also had to interview about 314 people from the informal sector. The informal sector is the one that's a bit difficult. In informal sector, people like people who the bottle collectors, people who work for the bottle collectors, people who work in the car wash, people who work in plantations, people who do babysitting, all that kind of work. Some of it they're not working for companies, they may be working for one or two individuals. It is that kind of a person that we also look. So we've had to look at around 9,770 people from the formal sector and another 314 from the informal sector. Right? Now later on I'm going to give you a copy of this document from which I'm basing this, so you can take notes and you can also take note of that. One of the things that I would like to highlight, that this is a historic for Fiji. It's the first time ever we're doing a national minimum wage, and the second thing to take note is this fulfills one of the requirements that we have in our Constitution. So we're looking forward to this exercise having a significant impact on the lives of the people at the very bottom of our society. Those who have been, the situation that we have in Fiji now is we're having a lot of people who are well qualified, but they can find it difficult to get jobs. And when you have a situation where there's excess supply of labor and less job openings available, what tends to happen is the wage rate goes down. So it's government responsibility to look after people at the bottom. So by this national minimum wage rate of $2 per hour, we're forcing the wages of those at the very bottom to lift up so that they can look after their families better. Now, there's been when the discussions on this when the discussions on the national minimum wage were originally held, the original recommendation from our consultant was $2.32 per hour. But after a lot of discussion with stakeholders, especially with some industries and with the small and micro enterprises, we realized that $2.32 is something that a lot of the small enterprises cannot afford. So when we are establishing a national minimum wage, we must be aiming to do two things. One, lift the minimum wage, but at the same time make sure that we don't kill the small companies that are providing employment. Right? So that's we had to find. It's like walking on a razor blade, finding the exact amount that allows you to increase people's wage, but at the same time, don't kill the small business. Eh? Don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. That has been fundamental. And we believe that this wage rate that we've come up with, this $2 an hour, is one that is fair, that the small and medium and that the informal sector will be able to afford. It will have an impact on their lives. There have been some suggestions that even if the national minimum wage at $2 per hour means if somebody works for 45 hours, he will get a wage of around $90. Now, the average at the moment in the agricultural sector is around $52 per week. So for those in that sector, their wage will go from $52 per week to $90 per week. In Fiji, there is a basic needs poverty line. And that basic needs poverty line states that for a family of 4, father, mother, 2 children, for them to be able to, to meet their needs, I think the basic need, it's 186. So that is the basic needs poverty line. There's been a lot of people say that, okay, we should raise the wage rate to 186. But of course, if you do that, what happens to our small enterprises who can't afford? What do you think will happen to them? If they can't afford that wage rate, what happens? They close down, right? They close down. So as I said before, we have to find the balance between raising the wage and at the same time making sure people keep their employment. The good thing that we have in Fiji, even though the wage rate is going to be increased, there will still be a gap between that and what people might need. But government has put in a lot of assistance for people at the bottom. You have bus fare for school children, you have now free education, you have food vouchers for people. All of this assistance, which is called in the economy, it's social wage. So while your wage might be limited, government has also provided other things that allows, that basically boosts the chance of people looking after themselves, and it boosts income in an indirect way, right? All those other things that we're giving. So once again, as I mentioned, the national minimum wage has been approved by cabinet. The legislation, the regulations will now be formulated, and at this moment we are anticipating make this come into force by March of this year. By March of this year, to have the national minimum wage in place. Okay, that's what I'll say at the moment. We've got somebody's got the press releases. Yeah, we'll distribute that, and in the meantime, and then after that, you can ask your questions. Okay, questions? Yes.
For Fiji TV. So this means that previously the businesses that, because some businesses before, they had a different wage and they've been paid above this. So in the sense that now they can reduce it to...
No. This is the minimum. You are not allowed to go below it.
No, I was saying, say like a company was before this thing was implemented, they were paying $3.20 an hour.
Yeah.
Now with this implemented, they can now pay less to their employees.
They can, but if they can afford to pay $3.20 per hour, they should not reduce. They should go up. This just sets the bottom below which you cannot fall. So what we're saying that if you are paying $1.50 an hour, you need to lift up to $2 an hour to give a return for your workers. But if you can already afford $4 or $5 or $6, you should be doing that. So we hope that when we have the national minimum wage, there won't be a race to the bottom. Companies that already can pay more, they need to pay more. Right? They need to be able to do that. Government only sets the minimum. Even in a lot of the sectors that we have, one of our concerns, for instance, when we did the survey for this establishing the national minimum wage, we found that in some areas there were companies that were not paying the national minimum wage. Let me just see if I can get the information that I have. Here we have. For instance, we found that in places like the security services, where the national minimum wage was $2.41, about 29% of the people that we interviewed as part of this survey, they were being paid less than the minimum wage for the security services. And there are other areas like, which is this one, sawmilling and logging, they're about 34% that were being paid less, manufacturing 32%. So we already have sectoral wages in each of these sectors. The companies that are not paying these minimum wages, they need to do the right thing. They need to pay at least at the minimum wage or more. But those that are already paying above, they should stay there or pay more. If you are making more profits, if you're being more productive, you need to reward your employees. Right? How do you reward your employees? By giving them more. And if you reward your employees by giving them more, showing that you care for them, it's more than likely that these employees will give you more of their effort. Right? They will work harder for you to make more money for the company. So, in other words, there needs to be a good sharing of the benefits of a company, whether profits or productivity, between the people who work in that company, because it is those workers who create value. Good companies, good employers will make sure that they reward their employees, because their employees are the greatest asset of any company. Company must look after them. So all we're doing in minimum wages, we're saying you can't go below this minimum. Right? Doesn't mean that people come down to the minimum. No, it needs to go up. It needs to go up so that people can have a better life.